The mansion stood tall in the heart of the city, surrounded by high walls and guarded gates. Inside, everything sparkled with wealth: golden chandeliers, velvet sofas, and expensive paintings hanging on the walls. But despite the riches, the house felt cold and lifeless. The only thing that mattered inside that house was one person: Madame Oluchi. Madame Oluchi was a woman of power, a single mother who built her empire from nothing. She had a son, Chukwudi, whom she loved more than anything in the world. In her eyes, he was perfect, the only person worthy of her love. Everyone else, they were beneath her. She believed poor people had no place around her unless they were serving her. Her workers fed her, never daring to make a mistake because Madame Oluchi never forgives. If a maid mistakenly broke a plate, she was fired immediately. If her driver arrived late, he was replaced before the next morning. She had no patience for second chances. But one evening, Chukwudi returned home from his university, his face heavy with worry. "Mommy, I need to tell you something," he began hesitantly. Oluchi frowned, adjusting her silk robe. "What is it, son? Speak up." "Someone is pregnant for me. My girlfriend." His voice was barely above a whisper. A deadly silence filled the room. Madame Oluchi's heart pounded. "Pregnant? How?" "Chukwudi, you are in your final year, 500 level computer engineering, and you get a girl pregnant?" Her son looked down ashamed. "Mom, it was a mistake. I'm sorry." Oluchi was furious. But then, something strange happened. She felt a rush of warmth in her chest. A child. She was going to be a grandmother. Her lonely night would finally be over. She imagined holding the tiny baby in her arms, rocking her to sleep. A smile slowly spread across her lips. "Is it a boy or a girl?" she asked, her voice softer now. Chukwudi looked surprised at the sudden change in his mother's tone. "We don't know yet, Mom." Madame Oluchi sighed, then nodded. "Bring the girl home tomorrow. I want to see her." Chukwudi's eyes lit up. "Thank you, Mom. You are the best. Thank you." The next day, he brought home Zirachi, a modest and intelligent girl from his department. She had a simple beauty and carried herself with dignity. As soon as Madame Oluchi saw her, she smiled, but her smile was cold and calculating. She studied Zirachi from head to toe. "Welcome, young lady," Madame Oluchi said. "What's your name?" "Zirachi, ma." "And your father? What does he do?" Zirachi swallowed hard. "He's a retired school principal, ma." Madame Oluchi's smile disappeared instantly. "A retired principal? That's all?" She let out a bitter laugh. "And you dare get pregnant for my son?" Zirachi was confused. "I don't understand, ma." Madame Oluchi's expression turned to disgust. "I wonder where people like you buy the courage and audacity to trap rich boys. You're a gold digger. Do you think carrying my grandchild in your womb would change anything?" Chukwudi wanted to intervene. "Mom, please. Zira is not like that." Madame Oluchi turned to Chukwudi. "Will you shut up? You have no taste, no respect for class. I worked all my life to give you the best. And this is how you repay me? By choosing a girl from the slums? Ah!" Zirachi's eyes filled with tears. She never expected this level of hate. "Get out of my house this minute," Madame Oluchi barked. "And you know what? Get rid of that thing inside your tummy. Drop your account details. I'll pay for your inconveniences." Zirachi's lip trembled, but she refused to bow. She wiped her tears and stood tall. Ma, go and ask about me. I'm the best in my department. I don't need you or your son for a good life. But this baby stays. I made a mistake, but I'll be fine. You and your son should never bother about me again. Zirachi turned and walked out of the mansion. Chukwudi tried to follow, but his mother held him back. If you step out of this house, Chukwudi, I will disown you, she warned. Chukwudi hesitated. He loved Zirachi, but he wasn't strong enough to fight his mother. Slowly, he stepped back inside the house. Zirachi left and never looked back. 3 months after, they graduated. Madam Oluchi was determined to erase Zirachi from their lives. She made sure her son left Nigeria immediately after graduation to study for his master's degree in Canada. She wanted to make sure there was no connection between them. No one asked about Zirachi. No one cared. 4 months later, Zirachi gave birth to a baby girl. She named her Chizaram, meaning God saved me. But fate was cruel. Zirachi suffered complications and passed away a few days after childbirth. The baby was left with her poor grandparents. They struggled to raise her, doing everything they could to give her a good life. 2 years passed. One night, in the faraway city, Chukwudi and his friends were celebrating his graduation. They drank, laughed, and partied late into the night. On their way back from their outing, they had a fatal accident, and all 5 of them died on the spot. The news of the accident got to his mom in Nigeria. She was devastated, almost at the edge of committing suicide. She lost herself in grief. She refused to eat, refused to talk. She just wanted to die. But with time, her friends helped her pull through. Still, her life was empty. She had no one, even her living domestic staffs. They all resigned due to the maltreatment from her. One day, a friend advised her, Oluchi, you should get a child to keep you company. Go to a child adoption agency. Apply for a little boy or girl. It will help. You have the money. So let that money bring you comfort. You know I did the same thing when all my kids relocated to the States. And my little adopted daughter, wow, that girl is an angel. No dull moment with her at all. At first, Madam Oluchi rejected the idea, but the loneliness was unbearable. Soon, she finally admitted maybe she would give it a try. Meanwhile, in the other part of the state, little Chizaram was suffering. At 7 years old, she had never seen the inside of a school. Her grandparents were too poor to afford one. Her grandfather's pension had stopped being paid by the government. Desperate for her to have a good life, they sent her to an adoption agency. Maybe she would be lucky to get a family that would train her, they told themselves. But fate had its plans. Madam Oluchi contacted the agency, the same agency where Chizaram was registered. 2 weeks later, little Chizaram arrived at Madam Oluchi's house late in the evening, clutching a small nylon bag that contained all her belongings. Her eyes widened as she looked at the massive house, the golden chandeliers, the polished marble floors, and the tall staircase that twisted up like something from a fairy tale. But this was not a fairy tale. She was here to work. Madam Oluchi stood at the top of the staircase, watching the little girl with cold, calculating eyes. She was pleased with the little girl's appearance. It said just one thing: poverty. So, this is the best this agency could give to me. Look at how you look. What's your name? My name is... Shut up, Madam Oluchi snapped. I didn't ask for a story. Just answer the question directly. The girl flinched. My name is Chizaram. Madam Oluchi's lip curled up in disgust. Chizaram. Such a common name. From now on, you will answer to Zara. Do you understand? Chizaram nodded quickly. Good. Now listen carefully. In this house, you will do as I say. Your job here is to be present. I just want to feel the presence of a human in this house at all times. And also run errands around the house. My chef and nanny comes once every week to cook and clean. You will eat only after I have eaten, and you will speak only when spoken to. If you disobey me, you will regret it. Do you understand? Chizaram swallowed the lump in her throat and nodded again. Yes, ma. Good. Chizaram felt her heart sink. She had never walked before. Never been treated like this before. She missed her grandparents. But they had no choice. She had to survive. The day turned into weeks, and Chizaram's life became a nightmare. Madam Oluchi treated her worse than a stray dog. She never spoke kindly to her. Never showed her the slightest bit of warmth. Every morning, Chizaram woke up before dawn to run errands. Bring cup, bring water, get my phone. The little girl was running around the house in seconds. But no matter how hard she tried, Madam Oluchi always found something to complain about. You are so slow. Do you want me to throw you out on the streets? Because that's where you belong. Madam Oluchi would shout, throwing a rag at Chizaram. Sometimes, if Chizaram made a mistake, she was forced to kneel for hours without food. She was never allowed to eat proper meals. Most times, she survived on leftovers from the kitchen. Even the security dog ate better than she did. The worst part, Madam Oluchi refused to buy her new clothes. Chizaram had come with only 2 dresses, and she had to wash and rewash them every night. Sometimes she would wear one while the other one dried. And when Madam Oluchi finally decided to send her to school, she enrolled her in the cheapest, most run-down public school she could find, saying, "You don't expect me to do what your parents weren't able to do." At school, the other children laughed at her worn-out shoes and oversized uniforms. "You look like a village girl," they mocked. "Did you fall from a tree?" Chizaram would lower her head and say nothing. She couldn't afford to cry. She had no one to wipe her tears. One evening, Madam Oluchi was hosting an important dinner for her business associates. She ordered Chizaram to bring some glass cups, warning her not to break them. Chizaram was so tired. She had been walking around the house since morning, and her small body ached all over. As she was carrying the cups in a tray, she missed her steps and fell. The entire glass cups broke. Panic gripped her. Her hands trembled as she heard the approaching footsteps, heavy and fast. Madam Oluchi stormed into the kitchen, her face twisted with anger. "You stupid, useless child," she screamed. "Do you know how expensive those glass cups are?" She grabbed Chizaram's ear and twisted it so hard, the girl screamed, "I'm sorry, ma, please, I'm sorry." But Madam Oluchi wasn't listening. She took the little girl outside under the rain, where her visitors would not see her, and left her there. Chizaram cried, "Mommy, please, I'm cold. Please, Mom." "Do you want me to beat you?" Madam Oluchi raised her hand. "Maybe next time, you will learn to do things right." That night, Chizaram curled up in her tiny bed shivering. Her heart was heavy. One afternoon, Madam Oluchi's friend Mrs. Teresa visited the house again. She had come for their usual tea time gossip. But as she walked in, she noticed the small figure in the corner. Oluchi, You didn't tell me you have a child that lives with you now," she said, watching the way Chizaram's weak body moved. "Oh, I took your advice," Madam Oluchi replied casually, sipping her tea. Mrs. Teresa frowned. "She looks so thin, Oluchi. Are you feeding her?" "I know food is not a problem in your house." "She eats," Madam Oluchi said dismissively. But Madam Teresa wasn't convinced. She knew Madam Oluchi so well. But she was just surprised that despite everything that has happened to her recently, she was still the way she was. "I think you should treat her better. Children bring joy. Tap into it. Let this little girl love you, and you'll be amazed," Madam Teresa said. But Madam Oluchi laughed. "What joy can a child like this bring me? A girl from the slums? Let her just be here to warm up the house. That's all I need her for." Mrs. Teresa shook her head. "My friend, you are hurting yourself more than you are hurting her." But Madam Oluchi ignored her. One evening, Madam Oluchi gave Chizaram her clothes to quickly iron. She had an event. Chizaram carefully set the iron on the fabric, but her hands were weak from hunger. She lost control, and the iron stayed too long on the dress, burning a large hole. She panted, "Oh no, Mommy will kill me." Madam Oluchi walked in at that moment. "What did you just do?" she shouted. "Mommy, I'm sorry," Chizaram stammered. Madam Oluchi saw the ring dress and snapped. "Do you know how much this dress costs?" She grabbed the hot iron. Chizaram's eyes widened in fear. But before she could react, Madam Oluchi pressed the hot iron onto Chizaram's back. A piercing scream filled the house. Chizaram ran out, crying, her back burning with pain. She ran into the street, where a kind man found her and rushed her to the hospital. At the hospital, the doctor saw the injuries and called the police. "Whoever did this to this child is wicked," one police officer said. Soon, Madam Oluchi was arrested. But because of her status, she bailed herself out that same day. The inspector of police, which was her friend, said, "Oluchi, you went too far. You are a public figure. People are watching. Blogs are hungry for viral news. I think you have to fix things. In my opinion, you should make sure you visit that child at the hospital regularly, because when people see you frequently at the hospital, they will assume the act was an accident." Madam Oluchi agreed. She decided to visit Chizaram every day after work, just for appearances. The next day after work, she went to the hospital to see Chizaram. Even in pain, Chizaram whispered, "Mommy, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for your clothes." Madam Oluchi wanted to speak, but her words were suddenly interrupted by two nurses who had come to dress Chizaram's wounds. Madam Oluchi wanted to excuse herself, but the nurses asked her to stay. As the nurses removed the wrapper on Chizaram's back, Madam Oluchi saw something strange. On Chizaram's back was a big birthmark, a birthmark that looked so familiar. Madam Oluchi has the same. Her late son had the same mark. She staggered back, her mind racing. How come this girl has the same birthmark herself and her son had? Same mark, same color, same size, and the exact spot? Madam Oluchi tried to calm down till the nurses were done. After the nurses left, she quietly asked Chizaram, "Tell me about yourself, your family, and that mark on your back." Chizaram was surprised at the question. "Mommy, you know my grandparents. Those are my parents. I never met my dad. And my grandparents said my mom passed on after I was born." My grandparents said my mother's name was Zirachi. And the mark on my back, I don't know, is from birth. But, Mommy, the agency told you about my history, right? Yes, they did, Madam Oluchi replied dismissively. The name Zirachi rang a bell. Madam Oluchi suddenly started looking restless. Okay, we will need to see your grandparents together after you are discharged. Chizaram was happy. Finally, she was going back to live with her grandparents. It's better I live and manage with Papa and Mama than living in that mansion, Chizaram said.